What if the biggest obstacle to your child's success isn't their ability, but the rigid structure of the institution they walk into every morning?
That is a provocative question, and it cuts right to the heart of a really aggressive and, frankly, fast-moving education debate that's happening in America right now.
We're talking about the Phoenix Declaration.
Exactly.
And this is not just some, abstract academic paper. We should establish the timeliness right away. Just this month, November 2025, Florida became the very first state board of education to unanimously adopt this.
Unanimously. That's a huge signal. It's now official state policy guidance.
Yeah.
And that is a massive challenge to the public school establishment we've known for decades.
A massive institutional challenge, yeah.
Yeah.
The Phoenix Declaration, it comes from the Conservative Heritage Foundation.
Right. And it's essentially a complete ideological reset for K-12 schooling.
Yeah.
It lays out this whole conservative framework for education.
So that's our deep dive mission today. We are going to unpack that framework. We'll look at the 7 core principles that its supporters believe are needed to instill civic virtue and academic excellence.
And we have to connect them to the policy that makes it all possible. That one powerful statement that public education funds should always follow the child.
It's a blueprint for parent empowerment for sure, but we also have to cover the opposition. The critics who see this as a thinly veiled attempt to just dismantle public education entirely.
A lot to get into.
Okay, so let's start with that core vision. The Phoenix Declaration feels like a profound philosophical break from the idea of the school as the main moral authority in a child's life.
It's a total rejection of that, really. The foundation, the first principle, is all about parental choice and responsibility.
What does that mean in practice? Parents as the primary educators.
Exactly. For a long time, the state acted, in loco parentis, in the place of the parent. The Declaration says no, parents are primary. The school is secondary.
So that changes the whole power dynamic. It's a direct challenge to the state's authority over curriculum, isn't it?
It is. It basically frames the state as a vendor providing a service, not the ultimate decider of moral values. And that immediately demands transparency and accountability.
Right. The school has to be open about what it's teaching.
Completely. About curriculum, about policies. But here's where it gets really pointed in today's cultural debates. The Declaration demands schools never hide information from parents about a child's mental, emotional, or physical well-being.
Which is clearly targeting policies around gender identity and keeping information from parents.
It's aimed squarely at that. It puts the parent back in control of those sensitive issues. Accountability here isn't just financial, it's relational. No secrets.
Okay, so once that parent-school relationship is redefined, the Declaration lays out these ideological cornerstones for what it calls cultural restoration. How does it define the goal of forming a citizen?
It defines it very specifically. The first piece is cultural transmission. It says students have to be taught America's founding principles and its roots in the broader Western and Judeo-Christian traditions.
So this is an explicit rejection of, say, a politically neutral curriculum.
It is. It insists that's the only valid historical foundation for a strong republic. And that idea directly supports the next principle, which is citizenship.
Fostering patriotism.
A healthy sense of patriotism is how they put it. Cultivating gratitude. It means reviving things like the Pledge of Allegiance. The idea is to teach the whole truth about America, including its failings, but without obscuring that America is a great source of good in the world.
And what about the actual academics? There's a part in there about getting away from ideological fads.
Right, that falls under truth and goodness. Education has to be grounded in objective truth. So for science courses, for example, it says they must be grounded in reality and scientific rigor, not subjective beliefs.
And it all ties into this final idea of character formation.
Yeah, that education should be about the full formation of a child, virtue, personal responsibility, self-discipline. It's a much bigger goal than just, career prep.
Florida's board chair, Ryan Petty, he put it this way. Since Americans don't agree on very much, they need some core principles we can rally around. He sees this as that necessary baseline.
And the principle they are rallying around with the most force is the policy one.
Funds following the child. Let's unpack that mechanism, because that's what makes this whole philosophical shift, possible.
That's the engine. That phrase, public education funds should always follow the child, is the key to promoting universal school vouchers.
So for anyone listening, let's just simplify that. What does that actually look like?
It means the state stops just sending a block of money to the public school system. Instead, the money allocated for your child becomes a credit or a voucher.
And the parent gets to decide where to spend it.
Exactly. You can take that voucher to your local public school, a charter school, a private school. It shifts the power of the purse entirely to the consumer, the parent.
And this idea has been around for a while. This isn't brand new.
Oh, not at all. You can trace this right back to economist Milton Friedman in the 1950s. He was the one who theorized that if you introduce free market competition,
You'd get better results.
better results, lower costs, higher quality. He saw the public system as a monopoly that had no incentive to improve.
Okay, but that's the theory. Is there any evidence that competition actually works? That it makes public schools better?
Well, the data from several cities suggests it does. Studies in Milwaukee, Arizona, and Michigan all found that public schools that had to compete with choice programs actually saw their test scores go up more than schools that didn't.
So the threat of losing students and funding made them improve.
It forced them to innovate.
Yeah.
And you can see the cost argument, too. One study found that public schools in some big cities spend 93% more per pupil than the median private school.
Wow, 93%.
Yeah, which suggests a staggering amount of, well, inefficiency. And we should remember, this isn't even a modern invention. The oldest school choice programs in the U.S. go back to the 1860s in Vermont and Maine.
So we have the philosophy, the economic theory, and some historical precedent all converging in this one document.
That's the full spectrum argument they're making.
And this declaration, as we said, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's from the Heritage Foundation, which is also behind the huge political roadmap, Project 2025. This context is vital.
Absolutely crucial. Project 2025 is the federal blueprint for, completely restructuring the executive branch.
So if Project 2025 is the master plan, the big architectural blueprint for the whole country, what's the Phoenix Declaration's role?
That's a perfect metaphor. If Project 2025 is the blueprint, then the Declaration provides the foundational materials and the local building code.
Ah, okay. It gets the states ready.
It gets them ready. By adopting principles like funds follow the child, states like Florida are pre-commissioning their own laws to accept the bigger federal changes that Project 2025 proposes.
Can you give us a concrete example of that? How does a state doing this help a federal plan?
Sure. A key part of Project 2025 is block granting federal funds, like Title I money that goes to high-poverty schools. If a state has already committed to the funds follow the child voucher model,
They're all set up to just plug that federal money right into their system.
immediately, they can integrate those block grants into a universal voucher system and bypass all the old federal rules. The state has already done the philosophical heavy lifting.
Which shows why this is seen as a strategic tool, not just a policy paper.
Precisely. It allows for a rapid, coordinated rollout of a very specific vision, from the local school board all the way up to the federal level.
Of course, a movement this big generates fierce opposition. We have to look at the arguments from critics, like the Florida Education Association. Why do they see this as so problematic?
The critics are extremely vocal, and they basically see this as a political game, not real reform. The FEA calls it a political campaign disguised as a declaration.
Orchestrated by whom?
By what they call billionaire-backed special interests, who want to dismantle and politicize public education.
And they see it as a distraction from the real problems on the ground.
That's their main operational point. They say the state board should be focused on concrete issues, like fully funding schools and dealing with the critical teacher and staff shortage.
Not chasing these ideological agendas.
Exactly. And the link to Project 2025 brings up huge equity concerns for them.
Right. Let's go back to that idea of block granting Title I funds. What's the practical worry there for marginalized students?
The worry is you would be diverting money from the poorest children in public schools to wealthier families who use vouchers for private schools. And this is the key point. Those private schools often lack the same legal guarantees as public schools.
What do you mean by lacking guarantees? What does that mean for a family with a special needs child, for instance?
It means a private school taking voucher money often doesn't have to comply with federal disability law, with IDEA. Public schools must provide a free, appropriate education. Private schools often don't.
So they could just refuse to admit a child.
In many cases, yes. Critics worry this will create more barriers for students with disabilities or religious minorities or LGBTQI students because private schools can legally refuse them service.
So you have this central tension. On one side, you have supporters who see excellence as parental choice, cultural formation, and market efficiency.
Right.
And on the other, Critics who see excellence as strong public infrastructure, full funding, and guaranteed equity for every single student, no matter what their needs are.
That's the collision right there.
Yeah.
Market-driven choice versus state-mandated equity.
So what we've seen in this deep dive is that the Phoenix Declaration is much more than a list of ideas. It is a clear philosophical choice, now backed by a unanimous state vote in a major state, that prioritizes a very specific vision for education.
It's a new foundation for state policy. And that foundation, it demands a new level of engagement from parents. The philosophy here suggests education is like planting an oak tree of truth and virtue.
So if you make that massive policy shift where funds follow the child, we have to ask, what responsibility does that place directly on you, the parent? In a system that's now defined by choice, your decision on where to spend that public money becomes the main tool for accountability. The burden is now on you to make sure that acorn is planted in fertile, truth-seeking soil.